Okay, we're going to learn about molar mass. Can you guess what the definition of molar mass is by this phrase? Good. The mass of one mole. One mole of what, you might ask? Well, it could be the mass of one mole of an element, like hydrogen or iron or gold, or it could be the mass of one mole of a compound, like carbon dioxide or glucose. Now, it's important to understand that every element has a characteristic mass. I'm just writing down a few different elements here. Just like every compound will have a characteristic mass. A way to think about it is like this. Just like different cars are going to have different masses, a Chevy Silverado pickup truck is going to have a very different mass than a Honda Civic. So every car will have its own unique mass, just like every atom has its own unique mass. And that's why we have to know the molar mass, because we need to know how much mass a mole of each individual element has. Well, it's very easy to do. You just need a periodic table. If you look at the periodic table, you can see that there's these decimal numbers underneath the symbols for each element. Well, that decimal number is called the relative atomic mass. You may remember that when we talked about the periodic table. And it's easy to find the mass of one mole of each of these elements. It's the same number as the relative atomic mass, and you just put the unit of grams. So for hydrogen, if you're looking, you can see that the relative atomic mass is 1.01. So the mass, the molar mass, or the mass of one mole of hydrogen is 1.01 grams. So let's write that down. So here, what is the molar mass of hydrogen? It's 1.01 grams per mole is how you write the unit. You could also write it like this, 1.01 grams per mole. This unit and this unit is the same thing. I just brought moles from the denominator here to the numerator by giving it a -1 exponent. So you can do that. You will see that. You will see both ways. So just make sure you don't let that get you confused. Try to find the molar mass of, let's say, element number 6, carbon. Take a look at the periodic table and see if you could figure out the molar mass of carbon. Another way for me to ask that is, can you tell me the mass of one mole of carbon atoms? And looking at the periodic table, your answer should be 12.01 grams per mole. Or you could have written it as 12.01 grams per mole. And it's that simple. You can find the molar mass of any element just simply using your periodic table, just like that. Now, if you have a compound, for instance, carbon dioxide, you have to know that, first of all, that this carbon dioxide, you might remember it looks like this from Lewis structures. So each molecule has one carbon and two oxygens. What if I have a mole of these, a mole of these? If I have a mole of these, how many moles of carbon will I have? How many moles of oxygen atoms will I have? Okay, that's important. The reason why is because when we determine the molar mass of carbon dioxide, we know it's 12.01 grams per mole of carbon. we only have 1 mole of carbon in a mole of carbon dioxide, so that's just times 1. Where here, you have to be careful because even though 1 mole of oxygen has a molar mass of 16, every mole of carbon dioxide has 2 moles of oxygen. See, a mole here and a mole here. So you have to be very careful with that and just make sure you're doing your accounting correctly. So 12.01 times 1 is 12.01. 16 times 2 is 32 plus 12.01 would be 44.01 grams per mole. If you're having trouble understanding how 1 mole of carbon dioxide has 2 moles of oxygen, another way to look at it, just using the car example, I'll draw 4 tires here. And a car has 1 steering wheel. And a car has 2 headlights. Just draw 1 headlight here, 1 headlight here. Here's the little chassis of the car holding it together. Here's the headlights. Here's the steering wheel for the person to drive. They're holding the steering wheel. Here's their legs. Okay, I think we get the point. Now, if I have 10 cars, how many tires would I have? Right, 4 times 10 is 40. What if I have a mole of cars? How many moles of tires do I have? Right, now you're understanding. 4 moles of tires. Remember, I can abbreviate moles with MOL. I've got 1 mole of steering wheels. And I've got 2 moles of headlights. Good. All right, here's another practice problem. And then I think you've got it. What is the molar mass of glucose? Here's the formula for glucose. I'll give you some more room. Okay, so first you got to ask yourself, well, how many moles of carbon do I have in a mole of glucose? 6 moles of carbon. I've got 12 moles of hydrogen. We've got 6 moles of oxygen. And then you know that it's going to be 6 times, what would I write here? Good. Let's put your periodic table back up so you can take a look at it. What would I write for hydrogen? 1.01. What would I write for oxygen? 16. Okay, so coming back here, 12 times 1.01, 6 times 16. Now this is getting a little much, so I will just go ahead and punch it in the calculator. You need to get good at using your calculator and being accurate with it. So 6 times 12.01 equals plus, open parentheses, 12 times 1.01 close parentheses equals plus, open parentheses, 6 times 16 close parentheses equals, and the answer is 180.18 grams per mole. Very good. Finally, what's the use of all this? Well, if we were in the lab and I said, I need you to measure out a mole of glucose for this experiment, you would simply find the bottle of glucose in the stockroom. You look for the bottle that has C6H12O6 on it. And then you would get the scale and you would put a weigh boat on the scale, which is a little plastic dish, as you know. And then you would start to spoon out this glucose into the weigh, well, you would hit tare, so all these numbers would say 0.000. You would start to put your glucose into this dish, and what number would you want to see on the scale when you know you have 1 mole of glucose? You'd be putting in glucose, 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 glucose. The number would go up, 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 up. When would you stop to know that you have 1 mole of glucose in this weigh boat? Exactly, 180.18. What if I wanted 2 moles of glucose from you? You would simply know that if this is the molar mass for 1 mole of glucose, that it would simply be 2 times this, or 360.36 grams. I hope that helps, and please practice your practice problems, and thanks again.